In this video I'm going to be showing you how to fully dismantle a Sega Game Gear. The main purpose of this is to get all the electronics out of it so that we can then put it in a sink of soapy water and get it washed. But we will refer back to this video in my future tutorials. This will basically show you how to open it up to get inside to replace the capacitors and stuff like that. So the first thing you do is remove your two battery covers, and there's 6 screws in the back of these, which are star heads, and it also has a security screw here. To remove the security screw you will need a special bit, which is known as a 4.5mm game bit. These are easily available on eBay for a few quid. So you can get these out with a pair of long nose pliers, or by melting the end of a barrow pen and pushing it down, holding it until it goes hard, and then using that to turn the screw. But I recommend, if you're going to be doing this more than once, to invest in a game bit, because it will make your life a lot easier. Once you have all your screws removed and the security screw removed, you just need to flip the Game Gear open from the bottom, and there's 3 sets of wires here which hold the 2 halves of the Game Gear together, which is why you need to flip it open from the bottom. So you just need to unplug these from the back half of the board, and there's only one place these sets of wires can plug into, and they only go in one way, so when you're putting it back together you really can't go wrong. We're going to concentrate on the back half of the Game Gear first. First you need to remove this metal shield, and there's simply 4 star screws that hold that in. Once you have the 4 screws out, the metal shield just lifts straight off. Next you want to take out these 2 circuit boards. The one on the left here is your soundboard, and the one on the right is your power supply. And on the soundboard here there's 2 screws that simply hold this in. On the power supply here, again, there's 2 star screws that hold it in. When you're taking the power supply off, this plastic piece here is actually glued to the body of the Game Gear. I have unglued this one. What I normally do is just stick a screwdriver up in underneath it and gently work it loose. It's not glued on too tight, so it's pretty easy to pop that off, and that comes out as one piece with the power board, like so. What it actually does is provides a bit of insulation for the battery springs which are behind it, so you can just leave that on. One thing I will mention, when you're lifting out your power board, make sure not to lose the orange part of the switch here. It just sits on top here, there's nothing holding it, it just sits on top of the power switch, and it can be misplaced very easily, so just keep an eye out for that. Once you've lifted both circuit boards out, that's the back of the Game Gear stripped, and we're ready to move on to the front half. Okay, moving on to the front half of the Game Gear here. We need to remove the main motherboard here, and there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 screws around the outside of the motherboard. There's 2 large screws on either side of the cartridge slot. There's also 4 screws which hold this reflective piece on. This is the reflector for the fluorescent tube. There's 4 screws, 1, 2, 3, 4 that you can leave in place. What that does is actually holds the LCD screen on the other side to the motherboard, so you can lift that out without having to worry about it. If you take these 4 screws out, the LCD screen will fall off the front of the motherboard and you risk ripping the ribbon cable that feeds it. So once you have the main screws round the outside of the motherboard removed and the 2 from the cartridge slot, the motherboard will lift out. You want to lift it from this right side first, because the contrast wheel here actually goes out through a hole in the side of the Game Gear. So if you lift it up to the right and bring it slightly this way, the whole thing lifts out in one unit. If you can see here, this is the ribbon cable here that feeds the LCD screen. If you damage this, the thing's scrapped. You basically can't do anything with this if it's damaged. And as you can see, this whole unit here is still attached to the motherboard. So if you leave those 4 screws in there, it holds all this in one piece. Next, you can go ahead and take the buttons and the pressure pads out. Each button has a pressure pad below it, and there's several different variations of this pressure pad for the D-pad, but they're pretty much all the same. It sits on 2 little spuds here, so you can pop that off and then you can pop your D-pad out. The next thing you need to do is remove the speaker. As you can see, one of the wires is broken off in this, but that's easily soldered back on. This black ring here is what holds your speaker in, and these 3 points here are just melted plastic. So that's basically what they do. They set this onto 3 spuds, and then with a something hot, they just melt them down, and that's all that holds the speaker in. So if you take your screwdriver and gently prise it up just at each of the melted plastic parts, it snaps off really easily. So I have already done it with this one, but if you just pop each one off like that, you will hear a nice little click as each one breaks off. And when we're putting this back on, we're basically going to set it down and we're going to melt it again to hold it back in place. So once you've that black ring off, your speaker just lifts out. And be careful not to break the wires like I have done, but that's easily fixed. So once you have the speaker out, that's the front half of the Game Gear completely stripped and ready to be washed. And that is how you completely strip a Sega Game Gear. If you're just replacing the capacitors in this thing, you really don't need to remove this motherboard. You can leave it in place and work on the capacitors just by taking the 2 halves of the Game Gear apart, basically. So I hope that was some use to some people, and be sure to check out my next video to see how to properly clean the casing on a Game Gear. And be sure to check out my tutorials on replacing the capacitors on the main board and the soundboard.